Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating and honestly highly debated lecture that tackles a deeply rooted societal issue. We are talking about that classic clash between modern marital priorities and traditional elder care expectations. We're going to examine a super pragmatic, almost purely economic approach to what is usually a deeply emotional topic. So let's just dive right into this. Must a daughter-in-law live with her mother-in-law? It's a question that has sparked literally countless family arguments and societal debates across generations. But the source material we're analyzing today doesn't just ask this question, it completely reframes it. Instead of appealing to sentimentality or, old-fashioned duty, the speaker tackles this dilemma using modern logic, individual capacity, and cold, hard economics. To really wrap our heads around this perspective, we're going to systematically unpack the speaker's framework. First, shifting the marital priority. Second, seeking consensus over submission. Third, evaluating education and economics. And finally, practical elder care solutions. Starting off with Section 1, shifting the marital priority, where the couple comes first. The whole foundation of this philosophy is a massive shift in what a marriage is actually supposed to prioritize in the modern age. Right off the bat, the source points out a stark contrast between past expectations and present realities. According to the lecture, we just aren't living in an era anymore where a woman enters a marriage primarily to serve her in-laws. In the past, unconditional care and living together, that was the absolute baseline. But the source argues that in today's modern intellectual society, the absolute priority simply has to be the marital bond itself and the couple's participation in society. And that brings us to a core assertion from the speaker. The true way to care for parents is for the married couple to live well together. The source makes the case that whether you live with a mother-in-law or not shouldn't even be the first question you ask. The very first goal is marital harmony. If the couple is thriving, if they're living a good life, that is fundamentally what parents actually want. Forcing a living arrangement that destroys the marriage is, ironically, the absolute worst way to care for a parent. But, what happens when the couple disagrees? That brings us to Section 2. Seeking consensus over submission, and the very real danger of resentment. Picture this scenario. A husband insists they absolutely must live with his mother out of traditional duty, and the wife, feeling totally pressured, reluctantly submits. Well, the speaker warns that this is a complete recipe for disaster. Unwilling submission inevitably breeds resentment, and without genuine consensus, living together practically guarantees friction. The source states very clearly that if a wife is forced into this against her will, the resulting environment is actually far worse for the mother-in-law than if they had just lived apart in the first place. The lecture brilliantly illustrates this point using a traditional idiom, sotum decil. It translates roughly to being penny-wise and pound-foolish. Basically, the act of losing something massive just to gain something small. The speaker uses this exact term to describe the tragedy of forcing traditional duties without mutual agreement. By trying to gain the quote-unquote small victory of having the wife physically serve the mother-in-law, the family loses the massive asset of a happy marriage and a peaceful home. It's just a total systemic failure. So if tradition isn't the guide anymore, how do couples actually decide? Well, this is where the lecture takes a highly pragmatic, almost controversial turn. Let's look at Section 3, evaluating education and economics through a decision tree. The crucial point here lies in a really strict decision matrix. The source maps out familial duties based squarely on a woman's education level and the couple's financial status. If a daughter-in-law has high education and high economic potential, the recommendation is crystal clear. She must work in society, and the couple should use care facilities or hire domestic help. On the flip side, if her education and economic earning potential are low, the logic dictates she should care for the mother-in-law at home. And the speaker totally doesn't mince words when explaining this logic, flatly stating, it is an immense loss to ruin a young life doing laundry and chores if she is capable of societal work. The lecture frames this entirely as an economic opportunity cost. If a woman has spent years being educated to contribute at a high level in society, tying her down to domestic servitude is framed by the speaker as an absolutely unacceptable waste of human potential. To really get this, we have to look at how the source measures capacity. A sharp distinction is drawn between what it calls the high-quality value of intellectual, societal work versus the low-quality value of basic domestic chores. The argument is that highly educated individuals are quite literally meant to produce high-value societal output. Pulling them away from that just to do laundry or cook meals for one person is mathematically and societally inefficient. But we do have to look at the other side of the speaker's equation here. If an individual has limited education and their earning potential in the job market is so low that their wages would basically just cover the cost of hiring a caregiver anyway, then mathematically speaking, providing care at home is the most logical step. The lecture treats this not as a moral judgment at all, but as a cold, rational calculation of resources.
Okay, so let's say a couple does have the means and the education. How do they actually implement this? Let's transition to Section 4, Practical Elder Care Solutions, and Executing the Modern Approach.
The source lays out a super clear 3-step execution plan for the modern, economically capable couple. Step 1, completely outsource the daily physical care. Find a high-quality assisted living facility or hire professional domestic help. Step 2, take all that time and energy you just saved and channel it aggressively into impactful societal work. And Step 3, use the resulting financial and emotional stability to visit the parents frequently, maintaining a healthy, loving relationship without all that daily friction.
What's really interesting is that the source actively advocates for assisted living facilities, framing them as structurally superior to home care. And why is that? Well, because the mother-in-law actually gets to socialize with her peers rather than just sitting alone at home. She receives guaranteed professional care. And, most importantly within this framework, the daughter-in-law is completely freed up to advance in society. It's presented as a total win-win-win scenario.
But the lecture also acknowledges reality. What if living together is absolutely mandatory? Maybe due to cultural pressure or the parents' extreme insistence, even for a high-income couple. Well, the source offers a strict compromise here. If you absolutely must cohabitate, outsource the chores. The daughter-in-law must still pursue her societal work, and the couple should hire someone else to manage the house. The core rule always remains: do not trap high-capacity individuals in domestic labor. Bringing it all together, the lecture's ultimate paradigm shift is this. Modern society demands logical, intellectual decisions based on an individual's actual capacity and the underlying economics. Blindly following tradition just because, that's how it's always been done, is viewed as an archaic mindset that actively harms everyone involved.
Which leaves us with a pretty powerful final thought to consider. We've seen how the source strips away emotion in favor of stark economic logic. So when you are faced with the complexities of family expectations, will you default to traditional duty? Or will you map out your own decision tree based on your real-world capabilities and societal potential? It's definitely a challenging perspective, but one that really forces us to reevaluate how we balance the past with our future. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the norms.